Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today I'm going to get into responding to two different comments from the comment section. This is a clip from a recent live event, and in it we're going to answer criticism from the community. The first talking point is around how Splinterlands needs to leave Hive or we're going to die. And the second is that Splinterlands itself is a Ponzi scheme. I think I have something unique and thoughtful to add to the conversation on both of these issues, and I hope you'll stick around and hear me out. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks so much for your time and attention, and if you want to be present during my weekly live events, check out my members page on my YouTube channel, get involved at whatever level you see fit, and you'll be invited to every private live event. Thanks guys, have an amazing day. God bless. Okay, so comment section. I come here to kind of get my head straight to prepare for what is a talking point for today. And there are lots of things I'm interested in. I've been really, shout out to Silence. I've been really enjoying his content. And he's got that bargain hunting happening the last like week or two, a lot of shopping. And he's a good old Canadian boy too. So shout out to him. I've been enjoying his excitement, and I've been myself like really, the trigger finger is getting itchy. So I know where my head's at, but then I come to the comment section because I want to see where your heads are at. And of course, there is always a little bit of, let's say, concern, right? And so, for one thing, I see a comment here from Dan Robinson. Until we get off Hive blockchain and onto the chain that people actually use, and that has attention, Splinterlands will continue to stagnate and die. That's pretty dark. It's pretty like final, pretty, decided. There's not a lot of wiggle in that language. He feels pretty definitive about that. And many of you probably feel the same way. My viewpoint on that is, that might be valuable, but more importantly than translating the game onto a different blockchain, I think is moving some of the finances onto the different blockchain. That's, he's saying we might stagnate and die unless we move blockchains. I want to say one thing about this, and we're going to move into a bigger comment, and that's the main that I want to focus on here. I'll say the one thing I want to say to Dan is that I don't think moving the game to a different blockchain is by itself this let's say, silver bullet for success. I think it's a deeply complicated transition. It would be, a huge production element. It would be like, coding and development and team, and, there's a huge cost there. And then so maybe what we would do is we would take money from some sort of enterprise that works on Ethereum or whatever other blockchain to fund that transition. Well, then we would be giving up ownership and probably visionary direction for where the game is going to go. And so then, that might be good and it might be bad. Finally, I want to say one last thing on that. The idea that moving the game is the only sort of path to success is missing, I think, a key core idea. You can move from financial aspects, some of the tokenomics, into different blockchains and have them touch onto those other levels and then into those other spaces, and that can be a bit of what I think you're actually hoping for. You want to draw bigger eyes. You want to reach out to different communities. You want to be seen and known and experienced by a broader base of player and investor. That is what I think you're ultimately pointing to. And if that's what you want, what we really want is have SPS and whatnot, and probably DEC, at least SPS, exposed onto those different blockchains. And there's ways to do that is already in the works. And when that happens, what I think we're going to find is that each of those respective on-ramps is going to have limited liquidity. And what that means is if there's not very much valuation in those pools, then what you end up finding is that there's going to be big sways in the price point. Why is that good? It's good because if we have SPS on Ethereum, we have SPS on Solana, we have SPS on wherever, and on one chain it's at 0.7 of a penny, and on one chain it's at 0.4 of a penny, what's going to happen? Trade volume is going to happen. Trade volume, because arbitrage. Somebody wants to take that profit. They want to claim that by buying on the one chain and selling on the second chain, and that is attracting eyeballs. That is attracting attention. That is attracting purchase volume and investment, because that wiggle room is profit room. And so that is necessarily what happens when you create multiple on-ramps, because you have different size liquidity pools across those different on-ramps, and that will drive some of what you're desiring, which is connection with those different links, and maybe excitement on those different chains, and finally investment from those different chains. So That was a bit of a side note, but I really wanted to, the point I'm trying to drive at with coming at Dan before we go to the real spice is that, people have concerns. This is, even though myself and, maybe you guys in the chat and Silence have great excitement and we're buying, some people don't. Some people are deeply concerned, and I get it. But that's nothing compared to Parham. Parham says, do not advertise for Ponzi game. You and your YouTubers put people in 90% lose conditions, cards, SPS for years. So, this second piece I want to just address first and foremost. But there's a two-part conversation here. One, YouTubers put people in a losing condition. Do we? Do we take your money and invest it into something? It's like saying that the casino around the corner from you, or the stock market, app on your phone that's available through Google Play, you got Robinhood on your phone. Is Robinhood responsible, or is Google Play responsible because you take your money and spend it on something that is speculative in nature? You buy a house and the house goes down. Is the realtor responsible for your loss? If you invest in Splinterlands because Dwayne's excited about Splinterlands, is that Dwayne's fault? It's really, really ridiculous that people want to walk in this sort of self-soothing approach to their own choices. And so that's one piece of this, because I do think it's very important to hit that head on. People want to believe or want to suggest that their actions are anyone's fault except for their own. And that's the big core that I would love for somebody like Parham to see. I don't think he's going to see that. The second piece that I hope people like Parham, or maybe you guys will see, is that even when we look at what the lose, he says the 90% loss, let's say, on certain assets, if we recognize that if you look at crypto when it's in its bear market moment versus when it's in its bull market peaks, for a fact the opportunity hasn't been seen in those moments. Like if we go back and look at Bitcoin when it's 3,000, the charts looked terrible. It had bled out from 20,000 to 3,000 and people said it was dead, it was dead, it was dead. And then it went to 75,000 eventually. And that example points us to the fact that there would have been a certain perspective in a moment when it was at 3,000 or 4,000 or even 10,000 where people were still critical, cynical, doubtful. And then it blows up and goes into 75,000, which is crazy and exciting and everyone wants to buy it. Then it says it's going to go to 1 million. So the tension that I'm trying to point to is that we don't know if Splinterlands is going to have that bull market moment. Again, it has had one. We don't know if it's going to have another. I would lean towards saying yes, but each of us has to make a fundamental, thoughtful sort of exploration of that possibility for themselves, and they're responsible to do that themselves. And no one takes your money and no one takes your wallet and makes you buy anything, period, ever. And so even if you see someone else getting gains, what you're experiencing is called FOMO, and maybe you want to chase green candles because somebody else has green candles. All of that's just like jealousy or jealousy capitulation if you're moving from one token to another. The long story short on something like on the second piece of what you're talking about is we don't know. No one makes us buy anything. And then we don't know that there's a loss permanently until until we give up on the project. If your tokens go down from, whatever your initial investment is to current day, that's a paper loss until you sell. If you believe that the project can still turn around and gain value and appreciate again and have a new bull market moment, then there is no loss, theoretically. And that's my perspective. That's my approach. Parham doesn't share it. Maybe you guys out in the chat don't share it. That is not a conversation about speculation. It's not a conversation about hope. It's not rose-colored glasses. It's a thought. It's a true statement about possibility. It's an objectively true fact that Splinterlands is not currently dead and could possibly go up again. Now, it's a subjective opinion that I think it's going to go up again, but it is an objective fact that it could. And so it's not a loss. It's not a loss until you sell. And so the question for me is it going to go up again? And for you and each of us, we need to kind of think through the team, their current position, their current runway, their future design plans, their ability to execute, maybe their past behaviors, all of that, to come to a final conclusion about whether we think it's going to turn in from a paper loss to a realized loss, because maybe you do sell. That to me is an important conversation to start with for a critic like Parham, and maybe for some of you. But it's less important than the first part. The first part where he says, do not advertise for a Ponzi game. He's talking about Splinterlands. He's saying Splinterlands is a Ponzi. And recently we've seen language like this actually from some of our own. In fact, in my conversation with Tails, again, respect to Tails. I said this to him. I say this about him. I've got great respect for him. But he speaks about Splinterlands and he uses the word Ponzi. He doesn't say that Splinterlands is a Ponzi. He says that a game needs to be fun in order to survive, and it doesn't appear there's many players, and in fact the player base is shrinking, and therefore maybe it's not fun, or that would be my conclusion. And he did say to me in a video that he doesn't really consider it fun anymore. At least it's not as fun as some of the alternatives in the competition out there now within Web3. That's all fair. But then to use the word Ponzi in the context of Splinterlands, as Parham is doing, it's important that we understand. I think most people who use that word don't know what they're talking about. A Ponzi is a project that takes your money and invests it, and that money is actually just, all the new money is just going towards paying out the old people and who are then leaving. The important thing to understand with respect to Splinterlands or any blockchain-based video game is that you could say, you could wrongly use that word to describe any business that is taking money from new investors. It's only a Ponzi if it doesn't have intentions or capacity to develop or attract new adoption and new players. I'm going to say that again. Splinterlands is only a Ponzi if it doesn't have the intention or the capacity to attract new players. Because if we have the capacity to attract, and I don't mean trick new players, hear me, a Ponzi wants to trick new players or investors or participants to come in with no real path or intention to new justification for being there. That's the core difference. So we might disagree ultimately that Splinterlands has that value written within it. You might say it's not fun. I don't think it has a future. You might say that there's no intention from the team to develop something that's meaningfully entertaining, or that has some logical and justifiable path forward in the future. Those would be opinions, and I would push against them and say, well, the team is currently employing several people that are literally designing new improvements all the time. But the deeper idea that people are, I think, the mistake they're making is that they're not acknowledging that Splinterlands is making efforts to improve its game design, experience that players have, the joy we get to have within it. Tactics is a new element to the game, or the evolution of what land will be, or the guild brawl experience, or summoners and bringing gladiators into the thing. All of new cards that are being created and creating new synergies. All of that is adding complexity and intrigue to some who like it. Now, Parham or you might not find those things fun or entertaining. That's okay. But it's so important and frustrating for me to hear people draw this connection without understanding that the distinction is a Ponzi is something where they are literally, there's no intention or desire or effort or plan or ability to draw a place of victory for you. Like there's no path forward. It's literally take more money to pay old and claim and to benefit myself. And I think you're being insincere if you're saying that Splinterlands is doing that. I don't think you can be sincere, earnest, reasonable, and claim that Splinterlands is doing that right now. I think clearly, even with Matt, the CEO, taking a really small amount of money to do this thing, and then taking on a job he doesn't enjoy to help the game keep going forward. All of that points towards, to me, sincere effort, deep investment and concern about the success of what this is, and a hope and a longing to make it better than it is today, tomorrow. And so you might disagree that it's going to get there. That doesn't make it a Ponzi. A Ponzi is something entirely different. And so that language it's so loaded with negative connotation, and it's so inappropriate in that it doesn't actually describe what the team is doing. I think it's deeply important for our community to understand that, because I think in the moments of salt like this, where SPS is lower than, you know, it's at 0.7 of a penny or whatever, and people are frustrated, as I pointed to with the first comment from Dan, you know, some people have concerns about the blockchain, some people have concerns about the team's funding, some people have concerns about, you know, ebb and flow of game design. Like, we're focused on land, and we're focused on new player experience, and we're focused on whatever else. I think a lot of that white noise driven by sentiment, our sentiment in this moment based on the prices at this time. And when we get to a place, if we get to a place where prices start to tick around, all of that drops away, because they don't really have thoughtful positions. Like, people that say these things don't have deeply thought out theses or hypotheses about why their position is correct. They have sentimental opinions about why this isn't going to work, or why the team is malicious, or why it, you know, negative sentiment, you know, negative talking point A. And so in order to kind of hopefully help those who are willing to listen, I feel like it's important to have that conversation around, what does that even mean? What does that word even mean? And how does it relate or not relate to Splinterlands? It's pretty spicy out there, guys. And it's not just Alex.